Suddenly, he remembered the words of his brother, who said that he was leaving the children with him, although they did not harm him and his wife. But they were still his precious children, as the Duke suddenly dropped to one knee, sincerely thanking Selina. The next morning, Irene and Ari woke up in a warm bed, not yet aware of where they were or what they were doing there. At that very moment, Selina entered the room and began to open the curtains, asking if they had slept well. The children were a little scared, but the girl said that no one would enter here without her permission, since this was her room. Suddenly, Irene became sad, after which she asked the girl if she was hurt, since all this happened because of her. The Duchess, on the contrary, replied with a smile that she was fine, and that they were also safe now. The girl then hugged the children, sincerely apologizing for breaking her promise and for making them suffer because of her. Smiling, she added that from now on, she would always keep her promises, no matter what happened. Irene immediately asked if she would visit them, to which he received an affirmative answer, because it could not be otherwise. Selina added that she would also find a way for the two of them to come to her at any time convenient for them. The girl was scared, because she knew what would happen if they came here, but the Duchess replied that this would not happen. She would make sure that Killian did not harm them. They truly believed that the Duke could harm them. They even responded to his name, and she doesn't want them to go through that torment ever again. At that very moment, Anna knocked on the door of the room, announcing her arrival, thereby surprising Selina and the children. The girl noticed that the children were hiding and said with a smile that everything was fine and she would just go out for breakfast. As she walked out the door, the Duchess said with a smile that Anna had arrived just in time, as the children had just woken up. She then turned her attention to the food the maid had brought, thinking that it was clearly not enough for 3. She asked to prepare food for the children, and at that very moment the maid raised her head, wanting to explain everything. However, she was immediately interrupted by Winter, who was heading their way with a smile, after which he apologized for being late. Hearing the greeting, Selina asked in surprise what brought him here in the morning, since he was usually not here. The man held out the bag and said that the Duke had learned that she would be having breakfast with the children, and had immediately ordered it to be prepared. Anna immediately said that she had forgotten to prepare it for the children, and ended up causing Sir Winter a lot of inconvenience. The man replied with a smile that everything was fine, because in any case, the knights had to prepare it. When the Duchess asked what they were, Remfry replied that they were A-class magic stones that had been collected less than a week ago. Looking in shock at the heavy bag, the girl could not understand why it was brought, because she did not believe that it could be food. Sometime later, Killian asked Winter if Selina wasn't scared when she was around them. Remfry replied that her ladyship was at first taken aback, and the Duke could not believe that he was talking about his wife. Winter said he suspected it was because she was able to feed the young lord and lady a good amount of cookies. At that very moment, someone knocked on the door. It was Hans, who announced his arrival, attracting attention. "Let's go to the study." The butler informed Winter that her ladyship had finished preparing to go to the annex. The knight bowed, saying that in that case he would go and escort her ladyship immediately to the annex. After waiting for Remfry to leave the office, Hans turned his head to the Duke, stating that it seemed like a dream. As he walked down the corridor, he purely by chance heard the endless sound of children's laughter coming from her ladyship's bedroom. If the curse of Lord Airy and Lady Irene is lifted, then the danger is over. But is that really how it will be? He wouldn't have to worry about something like what happened to Master Kirshen happening to the Duke. Suddenly, Killian stopped his flow of speech, stating that he had already said many times that he did not intend to die. Suddenly, the butler started shouting, saying that Master Kirshen had said the same thing, but it had all ended badly, after which his voice softened as he sincerely said that he didn't want to lose another head of Seyfried. Suddenly, the Duke closed his eyes and said, "At least for the moment." The butler immediately asked again. Without answering, Killian looked out the window, watching Selina happily walk down the hallway with the children. Suddenly, the Duke asked Hans if he had forgotten that Airy and Irene were higher in the line of succession, surprising him. After all, initially, they were supposed to become heads, but this did not happen due to the circumstances. This news will certainly be passed on to the Council of Elders, who still did not know whether these two were alive or not. They may begin to discuss the position of head of the family, as suitable successors for this role have emerged. After listening to the Duke in silence, Hans suddenly asked whether he should assign a reliable bodyguard to the Duchess. He thinks that it simply has to be done since the existence of Lord Erie and Lady Irene has come to light. Sir Winter can't always be there to protect them, so she'll need extra protection. Opening the box, Killian replied that he was actually just about to assign a loyal knight to guard them. Sometime later, when Selina and the children were outside, Irene asked if she could let go of her hand now. The girl didn't know what to do, and then looked at Remfry, who said with a smile that everything was fine. He explained that the knights on duty do not look in that direction, so they will not immediately see the transformation of the children. The Duchess agreed, since they were almost at the extension, so nothing terrible would happen. Irene asked him to promise that she would not go home first. The girl asked him not to worry, because she would not do it. Then Selina leaned over, smiling and offering to seal the promise with a pinky swear, just to be sure. When they did this, the children immediately ran into the outbuilding, smiling and saying that they would be back very soon. Waving them goodbye, Selina asked Winter with interest if the nanny knew that the children had been out all night. The man replied that he was not sure, because perhaps the sleeping herbs had an effect on her, just like last time. The Duchess said she would have to say something to ensure that something like this never happened again. Sometime later, the children returned, leading with them a woman Selina had only seen once. Looking at it carefully, the Duchess thought that she had not realized this before, since it was quite dark. It was the first time she had seen someone with gray hair and gray eyes, which made the person's appearance quite unusual. Suddenly, Remfry declared that she had not changed at all in 7 years, a phrase that for some reason greatly surprised the Duchess. The man added that she looks the same as she did 7 years ago, but perhaps this is not so once he sees her up close. As they got closer, the woman suddenly announced that she had been waiting for her for a very long time, directly addressing Selina. The girl replied dissatisfiedly that she had waited a long time, after which she wanted to ask a question about the children's arbitrariness. But the words died in her throat when she noticed that the woman had lowered herself and was obediently kissing her feet. Embarrassed, Selina stuttered that she shouldn't do that, to which the woman responded that the goddess was waiting for her. I couldn't understand what she was talking about, while the nanny stood up, after which she politely asked to follow her. Selina continued to be confused, trying to understand what all this meant and why she was talking about the goddess. Selina left the twins with Remfry. He was worried, but the Duchess is sure that this woman will definitely not harm her. Entering the room, the girl began to look around, thinking that it was a storage room and they were going to her room. After opening the doors, the nanny stopped and then announced that it was here, and Selina needed to go in there right now. The Duchess asked her if she wanted to go in there alone, to which she received a bow and an affirmative answer. As she walked further, Selina thought that this would be a special room, since this is where she serves the goddess. But it was just an ordinary bedroom, which did not stand out in any special way, except for one detail. The girl noticed the statue of the goddess Havina, which was resting alone on the nightstand next to the bed. If you think about it, she's the only one with that eye color. Is it a coincidence that her eyes are the same color as Havina's? Suddenly the statuette spoke, saying that they had met again. Selina became frightened and dropped it from her hands. The goddess immediately took on a human form, smiling and asking to be treated with a little more care. Clutching her heart, Selina said that she had scared everyone by suddenly speaking from the statue. Suddenly, Havina hugged her tightly, saying that she was very glad that the Duchess had exceeded all her imaginable expectations. Selina calmly replied that the only thing she had done was to do what the goddess told her to do, and nothing more. The girl then asked if she had returned it because she knew something like this could happen. And if that's the case, then the body she needs, she could ask someone else. It doesn't have to be her. Havina replied that there had to be someone who did not have magical abilities that conflicted with her divine powers. The people of the Grand Duchy of Kiev, to which she belongs, are, oddly enough, unable to wield their own magic. As a result, they were smart enough to start mining mana stones, gaining power and wealth. Selina replied that she doubted that was the only reason she chose her. The goddess stated that the last condition was to be a man who loved the Duchy of Seyfried and would not leave it. Selina replied that she had already told her before that she was not ready, but this fact did not bother Kavina at all. The girl had the feeling that she was not telling her the most important things, as if she was deliberately hiding something from her. The goddess was silent, and the Duchess tried to ask why she was not saying anything, which made her nervous. She felt like she was getting into something bad. But Havina immediately approached her and asked her not to be afraid. If she fully accepts it, she will be able to use its power whenever she wants, and will be able to help the children not lose control. Selina was frightened by such a statement, which is why she suddenly pulled away, guessing what exactly the goddess needed. She then asked if they weren't born monsters, because of her curse that she personally cast upon them. But now, for some reason, she wants to fix everything. She should be ashamed of such an act. The Duchess was shocked that she would even want to so brazenly use her body to fulfill this mission. Havina replied that she understood that she should be ashamed, but she broke the seal to free herself, even at the cost of losing most of her power, because she sincerely wanted to fix what she had once done. Selina suggested that in that case, she could just lift the curse right now, so as not to suffer. At that very moment, the goddess replied that once the curse was cast, there was no way to undo it. Monsters will exist forever, and the monster energy that flows through Seyfried's blood will never be purified. Images of children appeared before Selina, as she said that, until now, she had ignored those who suffered from the curse. And now she's just trying to use her body to get rid of the guilt that has begun to torment her. The girl asked to find someone else, because she doesn't know why she should help someone who is not honest with himself. Havina replied that she didn't care. Even if she slept forever, she would give her divine powers and authority to her. She added that he wouldn't need the body if Seyfried's children stopped suffering because of her and began to live a peaceful life. Standing at the exit, the Duchess said that she should have thought about it before mindlessly cursing them. Then she turned around, angrily declaring that she had started this mess, and now she had to clean it up without asking for her help. The goddess said with a guilty look that she should not do this, but this question caused a storm of discontent. Selina replied that she had no intention of helping a shameless goddess like her, especially in such a way. Havina screamed that she couldn't refuse her, when suddenly the girl felt herself begin to fall on her back. As the girl fell to the ground, the goddess added that she was now alive only thanks to her divine powers. So rejection could kill her, leaving her with no choice but to help lift the curse. Selina felt as if she were in a dream, echoing the goddess's final words of rejection. After some time, the girl opened her eyes, hearing worried Lily and Remfry calling her. The man was glad that she had finally woken up, and the Duchess, rubbing her eyes, asked what had happened to her. Winter responded that Rowena had called desperately, and rushing over, he found her unconscious on the floor. Selina decided to explain that she must have been pretty exhausted between the main building and the annex. The man suggested that she take a few days off, but she replied that everything was fine because she needed to see her children. A maid entered the conversation and touched her forehead, instructively stating that this was not so, and that she still had a fever. She is not allowed to go outside until she has fully recovered, which will take some time. Sir Kramer insisted that she take good care of the lady so that she could have a good rest during this time. The Duchess thanked her for her hard work, and Lily replied that if she wanted to thank her, she would have to get better. Selina said she was fine, so Lily could rest, then sent Winter away, who was also scared. The maid asked her to promise that she would call her if she needed anything, and the girl immediately agreed. Leaning back against the pillow, Selina thought that, frankly, what she needed wasn't rest, but something completely different. She had hoped not to take it personally and then get a divorce. But now things have taken a different turn. Now she understands that the problem is not the divorce, but because of the cursed goddess, she will not be able to leave this duchy. A few days later, the girl thought that the children were definitely waiting for her, so she decided to take more cookies. Walking down the hallway, Selina met Anna and asked if she could make something to snack on for the children. When asked if she was going to build an extension, the girl answered in the affirmative, because she couldn't keep them waiting for too long. Suddenly, she looked down from the balcony, noticing Killian, who was going about his business with the butler. Hans said he was worried when he learned she had not woken up in the morning, then asked if she was feeling better. After all, seeing how she recovered so quickly, one would think that the beaverskin blanket was very warm. At first, Selina didn't understand what they were talking about, but then she suddenly remembered that this was the very blanket that Lily had recently offered her. The maid heard that 20 precious young beavers had been spent on him, but the Duchess demanded that it be taken away from her. The maid was surprised by the strange behavior of the mistress, who, among other things, offered to keep it for herself. Lily couldn't believe that she could actually take him, and Selina added that she should get him out of her sight. And now the girl shuddered when she realized that this blanket was from Killian, and he decided to take care of her. She had no choice but to lie, because she refused her husband's gift, but thanked him. She added that she recovered quickly thanks to a rare beaver skin that he found especially for her. The Duke replied that he hoped she could spare him a little time, as he would like to introduce someone to her. Taking her hand, the guy asked if she was very busy, since it would only take a minute. She replied that she was not busy. Killian decided to help her down the stairs, politely inviting her to come into his office to get acquainted. When they entered the office, the Duchess was surprised to notice a girl who was dressed in a knight's uniform. Seeing her hosts, she bowed, introducing herself as Gabriella Tomer of the Chivars Knights, ready to serve her. To Selina's silent question, Killian replied that from now on, Gabriella would be her personal bodyguard. The Duchess didn't understand why I was a bodyguard, because she could easily go to the annex with Sir Winter. Killian noted that this was something he had decided on the day he returned from the snowfields, but had put off due to other issues. He then suggested that she would visit the annex quite often, and the girl shuddered when she heard this. Clenching her fists in anger, she asked if he planned to watch her, so that he would know her every move in the estate. Then she asked what if she refused. The guy asked in surprise why she would refuse a bodyguard. The girl hastened to explain that the children would not get out of control as long as they were with her, so she was safe. Selina realized that she had made a mistake in saying something like that, but now there was no escape from it. Suddenly, Killian said that he knew that she had a mysterious power that she had never told anyone about until now. What they know about it and can only guess, and that is why she could use some extra security. Suddenly, he politely asked his wife to do as he said, until everything became clear and they understood what was going on. Pointing his hand at the girl, the guy explained that Gabriella was one of the most elite and reliable knights of the duchy. She is less talkative than Remfry and is better at picking up on subtle hints, making her an excellent companion. Selina was shocked and tried to understand how he knew that she felt a little uncomfortable around Remfry. Even if Killian doesn't want to look closely, she's sure he's so worried about her and her safety. At that very moment, the Duke became sad, saying that if she did not want Gabriella, he could easily find her another knight. Suddenly, the Duchess replied that, in fact, Remfry was more than eager for the position, so everything was fine. He vouched for Gabriella's skills, so she would feel safe with her as her bodyguard. Then the Duchess turned towards the girl, smiling and saying that from now on, she would rely on her. Selina thought that instead of refusing right now, it would be better to accept the offer, building trust. A little later, when Selina headed to the outbuilding, Gabriella offered her to carry the basket, which looked heavy. The Duchess replied that it was not difficult for her, and the knight asked her not to be shy and to tell him when she was tired. Looking sideways at the girl with scarlet hair, the Duchess said that now she would always be by her side. Gabriella specified that she would be with her during the day, and Sir Hakon Jensen would be with her at night, and they would work in shifts. They walked for some time in complete silence, which confused the Duchess a little, but Gabriella was calm. Occasionally glancing at her, the girl realized that she was not talkative, unlike Remfry, who was always happy to support the conversation. If they were going to see each other every day, she wouldn't want to feel awkward around her because of this silence. Suddenly, the knight spoke up, politely asking if she could inquire. Selina agreed with a smile. Without wasting any time, the girl asked what her plan was, and the Duchess decided to ask again if she meant children. Gabriella explained that she wanted to know if she could permanently lift their curse with her magical powers. The Duchess replied awkwardly that she was not that skilled, but would try her best. Suddenly, the knight smiled ambiguously, saying in a cold tone that she was very pleased to hear this. This greatly irritated the Duchess, who frowned and immediately asked what kind of rudeness it was. Putting her hand on her chest, the girl apologized for being rude, but her knightly honor did not allow her to lie. However, these changes were not enough, so Selina stated that she had already been harsh, so she could continue. To her, it sounded like she didn't want the curse of the children to be lifted, and I really wonder why." And she behaved as if she could not accept her as her mistress, which also did not inspire much confidence. If that was the case, she would have to complain to Killian, since he had recommended her. A statement that made Gabriella tense. Looking at her displeased face, the knight hastened to apologize to her, deciding to directly explain her position. She admitted that she did not want his lordship's status to be further jeopardized by stripping him of his title. Killian is currently the head of the house, but once word gets out about the children, there will be talk of succession. After all, they are the rightful heirs, so she said that Killian would be in danger if the curse was lifted. In that same second, Selena realized that this girl was definitely worthy of Killian's trust and would not let him down. She then stated that she would go inside alone, politely asking him to wait there until she called her personally. After closing the door behind her, Selena tried to calm down for a while after this informative conversation. She was so absorbed in her own concerns that she didn't even think about what would happen when the curse was lifted. She should prepare herself, because anything could happen if she accepted the goddess's offer and lifted the curse. But despite everything, she wants the children to be able to live as young lords and ladies of House Seafried, as they should. When the girl was spending time with the children, Aery demanded to be noticed, after which he climbed onto the railing. At that very second, he made a jump, but, to the girl's surprise, he remained hovering in the air, and wings grew behind his back. Aery proudly puffed out his chest, while the Duchess praised him with a smile, saying that it was simply incredible. She noticed that his wings had become a little bigger, and the boy was genuinely surprised that she could still see them. The Duchess replied guiltily that they were a little dull until they opened fully. But yes, she doesn't know if it's a good sign that she can see wings since Irene lost control of herself. Perhaps it was because Havina's power had become weak, when suddenly Irene asked if Selena wanted to fly too. After thinking, the girl answered that she would like to, and at the same second, the girl said that in that case she would help her. When asked how, Irene put her index finger to her mouth, with a sly look, answering that it was her secret. At that very moment, the Duchess began tickling her, thinking that she was incredibly cute when she behaved like that. Selena suddenly realized that she hadn't taken a good look at this place when she left the dungeon. But, as you can see, they have everything they need, even though the toys are old, but Rowan takes care of their diversity. Suddenly, Irene asked if she liked rabbits or squirrels. The girl answered with a smile that she liked rabbits. Then the girl asked her brother the same question, but he answered with a calm face that he really liked wolves. Looking at her stuffed animals, Irene sadly said that they didn't have wolves, and Aery replied that it wasn't fun. Selena thought that if the previous duke had gone to the trouble of bringing Rowena, then he already knew about it. However, they did not lose hope, and hoped that they would be able to raise these children without putting them in danger. Selena looked at the twins, and her soul rejoiced when she saw a smile on their faces, because they were not deprived. Suddenly, Aery approached the Duchess, handing her a book, and then asked her to read them a fairy tale. The girl was surprised by the thick book, after which she asked to see what exactly he had brought her. The twins watched attentively and with smiles as Selena turned the pages, waiting for the story to begin. However, the girl remained silent, and the impatient children urged her to start reading faster. But a problem arose. The excited Duchess only now realized that she could not read a word, because it was an unfamiliar language to her. When she decided to get a divorce and just wanted to laze around, what she suffered most was the imperial words that appeared. She kept putting it off and pretending to forget, but she couldn't do that forever without being able to read. Even if she wanted to ask for help, it was strange that the daughter of the Grand Duke did not know her native language. She tried to learn it herself, but soon reached her limit, after which she never returned to this idea. From the picture, it looks like it was a fencing textbook, but how exactly is she supposed to read this to the kids? After exchanging glances, Aery approached Selena and said that this man was Ihi, on his way to save Arin. At that very moment, Irene came up to him, telling him to watch carefully. It was Arin who was going to save Ihi. The Duchess suggested that children imagine by looking only at illustrations, but they themselves also cannot read. The girl called out to them, urging them to pay attention to her, and then asked if they wanted to learn to read. The Duchess added with a smile that if they learned to read, they would be able to find out all the details about what Ahai and Arin were doing. Irene asked if she would teach them to read. To which Selina replied that if they studied together, it would not be boring. In fact, she was thinking about finally learning to read, but the children were also enthusiastic and agreed. Then the girl suggested putting the book away and playing with dolls for now, and Irene told Ari that they had a puppy instead of a wolf. While playing with the twins, the Duchess thought she had finally managed to solve the reading problem. Incredibly, there is also etiquette that young lords and ladies must learn, and she needs that too. But could children who grew up like wolves live like ordinary people? She suddenly thought about divine power. The twins watched in surprise as the Duchess shook her head that she shouldn't rely on her all the time. Then Selina decided to do everything she could to help the children become independent and self-sufficient. When the girl finished playing with the children and left the room, she immediately shuddered when she heard Rowan's sudden voice. She asked if the young lord and lady were okay or out of breath, and was told that they had played to their heart's content and had fallen asleep. Suddenly, Selina noticed Rowan's worried expression and asked what was wrong. At that very moment, the woman fell to her knees, desperately asking her ladyship for help, thereby surprising her. The Duchess immediately began to ask what had happened and why she had suddenly knelt before her. Rowan begged to awaken the holy goddess, but Selina did not understand what this request could mean. The woman explained that since the holy goddess spoke to her, she had been sleeping and had still not responded to her prayers. As they entered the room, Selina turned her attention to the statuette, asking if something like this had ever happened before. Walking up to the nightstand, Rowan replied that she had never slept for so long, although she could sometimes leave it for a short time. Looking at the frowning face of the Duchess, the woman realized that something bad had definitely happened to the goddess. Slowly taking the statuette in her hands, Selina thought that the goddess had said that they didn't have enough time. Perhaps her life was shortened because she had to give her powers to her, or because she rejected her. Suddenly, the girl asked if she could take this statue of the goddess, thus confusing Rowan. Hearing a hesitant but affirmative answer, the universe asked if it could give up on her so easily. The woman explained with a smile that the Duchess had been chosen by the goddess, and therefore there was no reason to refuse. Rowan was sure that Selina also knew how to wake her up. Besides, there was nothing she could do right now. So she leaves the goddess in her arms, and the Duchess puts the statuette in the basket, heading for the exit. Walking next to Gabriella, Selina shuddered, noticing with surprise the huge number of birds in the sky. She asked if they were migrating, but the knight explained that they were messenger birds heading to their estate. Gabriella then frowned, assuming that the elders of House Siegfried had already begun to act. The Duchess thought this was too sudden, but the knight had completely opposite thoughts on this matter. She explained that this was quite natural, since rumors about the young master and lady had already spread. Selina was stunned, and therefore suggested that the girl hurry back immediately, and she immediately agreed. When evening came, Killian was still busy accepting various letters from carrier pigeons. At that very moment, the Duchess knocked at the door, declaring that she had something to say and asked permission to enter. Before the girl had time to step into the office, the worried guy asked if Gabriella had done something wrong. Smiling, Selina gave a negative answer, because as he said, she was an exceptional and loyal knight. Returning to his place of work, the Duke calmly asked why, in that case, she wanted to see him. The guy was very surprised when his wife said that she would like to teach the children to read, asking his permission. Sitting opposite her husband, the girl tried to explain that, as he knew, there were many books in the extension. If they learn to read and write, they will be able to gain basic knowledge that can help them in the future. When she finished, she watched closely at Killian's thoughtful expression as he considered what to do. The Duchess suggested that he, too, did not want the children's curse to be lifted because of the ducal title. However, she strongly doubted this, because then he would not be happy when he saw the children in their true form. But it is possible that he still does not want the curse to be lifted due to his reluctance to hand over the title. The Duchess could think of nothing better to do than ask him directly if he was also afraid that the curse on the children would be lifted. The guy noticed the word "also," after which he menacingly asked who else could have told her such nonsense. The girl hastened to explain that no one. It was just an assumption that others might also think so. Having calmed down, the Duke said that she was right. It wouldn't hurt to teach them to read, after all. They were the Duke's children. If she needed anything, she could ask Hans to prepare it. Selina thanked him happily. Suddenly, Killian said that he had the feeling that she was confident that the curse would definitely be lifted. The girl thought that even if the curse was not mentioned initially, she knew that the novel had a happy ending. She replied that she didn't know anything for sure, and the guy was surprised that she didn't know, even with such abilities. Rising from his seat, he suddenly asked how much longer he would have to pretend that he knew nothing. He heard that Gilrod kissed her foot, and she was still going to tell him that she didn't know what it meant. The Duchess was very indignant when she heard this statement, and then asked if it was not a sign of respect. Killian chuckled, replying that he didn't think she would continue to treat him like a complete idiot. The girl menacingly declared that she had only recently learned about the curse of the children, and about the Gilrods, and about her own power too. If it weren't for the children, she wouldn't have known about their existence, or about her powers, because he wanted her not to know. Selena was torn between emotions of indignation as she began to shout, while talking about the order of succession to the title. The girl added that divine servants attach too much importance to even minor details. At the same moment, the Duke declared that they say there are 2 reasons why the Gilrods might kiss someone's feet: when they wish to receive a blessing from a great sacred priest, to whom the goddess has given prophecy, and also when they express their condolences to the living offering that they will be giving to the goddess. Meanwhile, Hans and Gabriella, who were standing outside the office door, were surprised to notice the displeased lady. They tried to address her, but the Duchess ignored them, walking away with a heavy gait. After this, the butler entered the office, asking his lordship why he was so intemperate with the Duchess. The rumor that the Gilrods use humans as offerings is a false rumor intended to slander them. He himself saw how the Duchess sincerely wanted to help the young master and lady get rid of the curse. When he decided to give his consent to this marriage, he said that he would make sure that his wife did not regret this marriage. Killian asked in return if he had ever treated her so badly that she regretted it. Hans replied that since she had come here, she had become more modest than when she was the daughter of the Grand Duke. All his hidden wealth would not be enough to even compare with her previous lifestyle. Hans frowned, stating that it was time to admit that he just didn't know how to treat his wife. Killian asked if this shouldn't have been expected, since he had never been truly interested in the marriage. He even conducted an investigation to see if there might be some mastermind behind it, but there was nothing like that. But what is important to him now is to remove the curse from the children that his brother personally entrusted him to look after. The butler replied that if that was the case, he still needed to learn to get along with his wife, because it was not too late. After all, in order to achieve what he wants, he needs her, because only she has these mysterious special powers. He may never have wanted this marriage, but as long as they have the same goal, they can work together, hand in hand. At that very moment, the Duke announced that Selena had a request. Hans was surprised, because the lady had not informed him about it. Killian asked to find her a teacher as soon as possible who could teach Ari and Irene to read and write. The butler paused before asking if there was anyone in particular he wanted to hire. The Duke replied that it was necessary to find a suitable person who would not care about anything except the children's education. Sometime later, Lily, who came to Selena's chambers, asked her what happened and why she was crying. The girl replied that nothing, but she thought about Killian's words, the living offering, and his condolences. It's enough that the goddess is trying to make amends for her misdeeds by using her body, even without her consent. The Duke's men hope she will lift the curse, but now I am the suspicious husband who says such things. She remembered the frown on her husband's face as he said he didn't think she would treat him like a complete idiot. At that very second, someone knocked on the door, and when asked who was there, a firm and confident answer was heard that it was Gabriella. Selena let her in, and when the knight entered, she wanted to say something, politely addressing her ladyship. But when she froze in surprise, seeing the lady under the blanket, she hesitantly asked if she could come over. Hearing an affirmative answer, it stated that it did not know what the gentleman had said, but was sure that this was not what he had meant. At that very moment, the Duchess decided to ask her if she, too, knew the meaning of Gilrod kissing someone's feet. Gabriella replied that the Gilrods were known for not throwing away even a withered leaf without a good reason. They believe that all living things are born of the goddess Havina, and therefore, absolutely everything that surrounds them is her creation. Selena awkwardly stated that she was sure that anyone who gave meaning to such a thing would not kiss her feet for no reason. With a serious expression on her face, The knight replied that she believed that she did not really think of her as an offering. Gabriella guaranteed it, but the Duchess asked her to stop if she was simply trying to protect her master. Closing her eyes, the girl replied that it was she, Gabriella Tomer, speaking, and that it had nothing to do with the gentleman. She does not know all that was discussed in his lordship's office, but it seems he made a mistake in telling her this. When asked if she was serious, the girl replied that she was proud to be His Excellency's faithful knight. Selina thanked her, to which the bodyguard replied that there was no need for thanks. But this was not true. After all, if it weren't for her, the Duchess would have continued to worry, thinking about all this only in a negative way. She would continue to believe that she might actually be a living offering, or that she was being used as a puppet. Selina thanked Gabriella again, which the knight was genuinely surprised by, since she had done nothing of the sort. The bodyguard smiled and replied that she really appreciated her words, and the Duchess was surprised to see her smile for the first time. The next day, looking at the tearful lady, Lily concluded that the swelling had not gone away. She couldn't face the Duke like this, but Selina replied that she wasn't going to see him for a while. The maid decided to ask if they had had a family quarrel yesterday. Otherwise, she simply wouldn't have been crying so much. They say that nothing is as fleeting as a lover's quarrel, so she will definitely be fine soon. The Duchess hesitated, and the maid headed for the exit, and, opening the door, found a smiling Hans. When Lily came out into the corridor, the butler asked the lady if he could go inside, surprising the maid. Selina, who heard his question, immediately invited him in, this time surprising the butler. The man wanted to ask if she had slept well, but seeing her swelling, he fell silent, and the Duchess asked her not to worry. Hans said that she asked to find a private teacher, and he came because he thought he had found a suitable candidate. The girl was surprised when she was asked if she had heard the name Paul Jotrick. He was praised as a young great sage. It's been many decades since his fame spread around the world, so he's not surprised that she doesn't know him. He is a legendary gifted scholar who became a senior researcher of the Imperial Mage Tower at the age of 9. Selina was stunned, since this age was almost equal to Irene and Eri, that is, very young. Hans added that he was known for having trained the older crown prince on the emperor's orders. As a result, he was granted the title of count, along with the territory of Haken Castle, where fertile lands are located. At the same moment, the Duchess asked him if he was not too qualified to be a private tutor. The butler replied that all this was in the past. Now no one called him a great sage, as they had before. All because 10 years ago he was arrested for embezzling funds from the Magic Tower, and his career went into decline. Selina was shocked that he wanted the children to be taught by someone like him. No matter how smart he was a criminal. Dvoretsky explained that he would not teach ethics and morals, but history, mathematics, geography, and astronomy. He recommends it because the monastery to which he was exiled is nearby, and his term will soon end. On top of that, this man is blind, so you don't have to worry about his criminal past. Selina realized that if he was blind, he wouldn't know anything about the children, and she wouldn't have to worry about them being portrayed as monsters. However, the genius had another question. Would Killian agree to hire him as a private teacher? Hans replied that his lordship had said that he left the education of the young master, or lady, entirely to her discretion. So from now on she has all the powers, after which the butler decided to ask what she would like. Rising from her bed, the Duchess was glad that she had nothing to worry about, and that he was perfect for the role. She had no reason to refuse, so she would like to meet this Pavel Jotrike in person. Her mood immediately lifted when she realized that she wanted to personally ask him to become the children's teacher. A few days later, when Selina was with the children, Irene sadly asked if they could come with her. The girl asked in response how many nights she would be gone. The girl answered 10, considering that a very long time. The Duchess asked to listen to Rowena and under no circumstances leave the outbuilding during the day, and to fly only at night. But even during this time they needed to make sure that people wouldn't notice them. Irene asked why they had to wait so long. The girl replied with a smile that she needed to bring a teacher for them, and this news delighted the twins. Selina explained that he would teach them so that they could read books themselves, and he would also tell them about the stars in the night sky. For this to happen, she absolutely needs to meet him in person, but he lives quite far from here, so she will return together with their teacher in 10 nights, At that very second, the children stretched out their arms for a hug. Embracing the Duchess tightly, they declared in one voice that they would behave well and wait for her with impatience. With a wide smile on his face, Ari asked her to be sure to come back in 10 nights and not to be late under any circumstances. A little later, when Selina and Gabriella were walking through the courtyard, they were surprised to notice a strange crowd of servants. At that very moment, Lily, who was dressed in casual clothes, asked the lady why she was so late. The maid explained that his lordship was already waiting outside, and it seemed that something interesting was happening. Calling out to the Duke, the girl apologized with a guilty look for being late. These children didn't want her to leave. She then asked what was going on, noticing Hans's sad face, which gave cause for concern. The Duke explained that it seemed that these old men were doing better and wanted to come and see the snow in person. The butler explained that the elders wanted to visit the estate as soon as possible, so they were discussing what to do about it. They have already sent a refusal, but Countess Pontaine is very determined to visit them, so they are worried. Selina asked if he was talking about Madame Pontaine, the wife of Uncle Adler, who is the president of the Council of Elders. The Duchess understands why she is so adamant, because now she is the one who knows the most about children. The girl doesn't know whether she wants to see her or whether she wants to check on the children, but there is a high probability of both. Selina tensed when she heard Killian ask how she knew about this, which made her a little angry. Looking at her husband's frowning face, the girl resolutely replied that she was the mistress of this house, and that was why she knew. The Duke said that everything would go wrong if he was not here when the elders arrived, but there was nothing to worry about. In fact, it would be better to take it slow and look around the duchy. Selina tried to understand why he was so impudent. At that very moment, the butler decided to soften the edges, guiltily declaring that his lordship had meant something else. He interpreted his word to mean that she could freely enjoy her trip without worrying about anything. The Duchess sighed heavily and frowned, trying to understand why he couldn't tell her this directly himself. Without wasting any time, the girl headed inside the carriage, giving the order to leave, because they still had a lot of things to do. The servants immediately bowed, wishing their mistress a safe journey, but Killian did not say a word to her in parting. While Selina was waving her hand at everyone with a smile, the Duke quietly approached her, thereby frightening her. The girl asked if he had forgotten something, in response to which the guy extended his hand and asked her to give him his. The Duchess did not understand why this was necessary, but she fulfilled the request, feeling the lips on her fingers. Killian said that when a man from Seyfried's family kisses the back of his wife's hand, it is a sign of respect. Then he kissed her a little differently, explaining that this was his apology for everything he said to her earlier. The guy asked her to remember it well and come back as soon as possible, because he would be waiting for her very much. After a while, Selina touched her palm, thinking that it was just a formal apology. However, from the curse of the children to the situation in the Seyfried family, a lot has changed during this time. If this is true, then perhaps Killian's heart could open to someone new, and everything would go wrong. Perhaps there would be no need to worry about Shione's younger brother, but she suddenly shook her head that this couldn't be. She tried to regain her composure, realizing that she had to focus on the purpose of the trip now. After some time, Lily asked if they had come to the right place, since it had only taken them 3 days to get here. Gabriella, helping Selina down, explained that a criminal would never be imprisoned in a rich monastery. Lily, almost sobbing, suggested that they find this young great sage as quickly as possible and return back. After that, they began to look at a large number of people, wondering what this person looked like. The Duchess said awkwardly that the only thing she knew was that he was blind and a little older than Killian. With a thoughtful look, Lily said that if he was blind, then perhaps they had already found him, and then pointed to the man. The maid explained that he had a stick and something that looked like a guide dog, so it didn't take long to find him. At the same second, Selina turned to him. Hearing her name, the man took off his hood and asked who called him. Selina thought he was about 25 or 26 years old, but she would have easily believed him if he said he was younger than her. Besides, it is clear at first glance that he is so handsome that she would remember him if she had met him before. At that very moment, Lily told the lady that she had never seen such a handsome man, which embarrassed Pavel a little. The Duchess was shocked by her maid's behavior, so she pinched her to bring her to her senses and calm down. The girl then introduced herself as Selina Seyfried, wife of Duke Kilian Seyfried, the current head of the house. She said that she came to discuss something with him, so she asked him to spare some of his time. The boy bowed and replied that he was surprised that the Duchess had personally visited him, and he wanted to ask why. As embarrassed as it is for him to say it, he is a criminal of the Empire, and he has already become unaccustomed to the idea that anyone can look for him. The girl replied that this was not something she could talk about in the middle of the street, suggesting that they talk in the carriage. They followed inside the carriage, after which they took their seats, and there was an awkward pause for a few seconds. Selina decided to get straight to the point by asking if she could ask him to be a personal tutor for the children. They not only offer him housing, food, and other amenities, but also make sure that he is satisfied with his salary. Without thinking, Pavel agreed, which delighted the Duchess, who could not believe that he had given an answer so immediately. But he had one condition. The girl asked him to tell it. Whatever it was, she would try to fulfill it. Pavel said that he would like her to give him a special pass to the northern gate of the duchy castle, and whenever he wants, he can go out. And he also politely asked to always provide him with a horse and bodyguards. Selina replied that there were only snow-covered fields around the castle's northern gate, and asked why he needed that. The guy replied that the key he wanted to find was there, but right now he couldn't get there. Meanwhile, the twins, who were looking at the books, began to miss Selina very much, which made them sad. Suddenly, Ari suggested that they go check on her. If they flew high enough, everyone would think they were birds. Irene smiled and suggested that they just wait for her, as she would be back soon, and they wouldn't have to put themselves in danger. The boy stated that 3 nights had already passed, but the girl instructively clarified that only 3 nights had passed. Then Ari said that he would just look around the area, after which he went outside, moving away from the outbuilding. Deciding that this was a good enough place, the boy released his wings, feeling a slight tingling sensation. He remembered Selina saying that if his wings hurt, maybe they were growing, since this was the age for a growth spurt. The girl smiled, saying that he would become even more delightful, and she would like to be able to fly like him. As he rose into the sky, the boy thought that if he trained and learned to fly higher, Selina would be happy. He smiled, thinking he couldn't wait to show her how high and far he could fly. Having risen into the sky, Ari flew a sufficient distance when he suddenly noticed several carriages that had stopped. He noticed the wolf on the flag, and remembered that there was also a wolf on the carriage Selina was riding in. The boy blushed, imagining how he would meet a girl there, but first he decided to just check if she was there. As he flew a little closer, he realized that it didn't matter how hard he looked, because he couldn't see Selina anywhere. No matter how hard he tried to look into the carriages, the Duchess was nowhere to be seen, which upset him. Ari decided that it was time to go back when he suddenly heard someone talking about Kilian, who dared to deceive someone. He heard people saying that this time they definitely had to take care of the monsters with their own hands. Someone mentioned Selina, adding that they should deal with this before the stupid girl noticed. At that very moment, one of the men raised his head up, noticing a dragon nearby, after which he announced the monster. Loud screams were heard, which frightened Ari, and the knights immediately began loading their crossbows and preparing their purification stones. Tears also appeared in the boy's eyes as he tried to understand what to do and how to get out of this situation. Suddenly, he noticed an estate nearby and decided that he needed to return there as soon as possible before it was too late. But at that very second, the command to fire sounded, and at that very second a crossbow bolt pierced the boy's wing. The pain was so severe that he began to lose consciousness, thinking at the end that Irene would worry. At the same time, Kilian, who was working on the documents, heard Hans's voice, who suggested that he finish here. Having agreed, the boy heard a strange sound, and turning his head, he saw something in the sky, assuming that it was a bird. But, looking closer, he noticed a dragon with a crossbow bolt in its wing, which immediately caused his face to change expression. Without wasting any time, he ran to find Ari or Irene, thinking that this place should be somewhere around here. Just when he thought that he simply hadn't noticed something, since he couldn't find them anywhere, he suddenly noticed a dragon above him. The Duke was frightened, unconsciously grabbing the hilt of his sword, but then he thought that he must have gone mad. He asked himself if he would dare to raise his sword against his nephews again, but he immediately abandoned the idea. Instead, he caught the falling dragon, preventing it from falling painfully to the ground, but it kicked in pain. Killian knew he was fighting, but not hitting him or using his claws, meaning he didn't mean him any harm. He doesn't try to attack him, but he is still in pain, which can cause him to unknowingly harm him. Suddenly, the guy's eyes widened in surprise when he noticed Aerie in front of him, whom he recognized intuitively. The Duke noticed that he had lost consciousness and had become much smaller because he had used up his magical power. As he suddenly noticed the arrow, he asked himself who could have done such a thing, and immediately discovered the seal of the wolf. At that very moment, worried knights ran up to the Duke, asking if he was okay, and he replied that he was fine, after which he showed them the trembling dragon, explaining that Aerie had been wounded by an arrow and was now in serious condition. Killian immediately ordered an urgent message to be sent to Selena, asking her to return as soon as possible. The boy then looked up, realizing that they had already arrived, noticing several carriages approaching the estate. When they stopped, and rather you slowly came out Countess Pontin Siegfried, with a calm expression on her face. Approaching her, Killian greeted her, seeing his appearance. The woman assumed that he had just returned from hunting. Smiling, the Duke asked her not to worry about it, explaining that he had simply tripped on the stairs. At the same moment, two more men, Count Adler and Marquis Raymond, approached them, greeting the head of the house with a smile. Adler apologized for arriving uninvited, but the situation required them to act immediately. Raymond added that the Duke said he tripped on the stairs, although that way he wouldn't catch a single monster. When suddenly he showed up, Killian should have heard that his crossbow squad had shot one along the way. At that moment, the Duke became angry, realizing that the arrow belonged to the Marquis, and now he speaks about it with a smile. Clearing her throat, Pontin asked how long they, the three gentlemen, planned to make the lady stand like that on the street. The Duke suggested that they go inside, as he should have been much more careful in such cold weather. As they walked down the hallway, Killian was overtaken by the butler, who had quietly drawn his attention to tell him the news. Hans whispered that Sir Winter had sent a message from the outbuilding. Killian began to listen carefully to his every word. The butler said that Lord Aerie seemed agitated when he woke up, so the Black Wolves erected a barrier. He added that his injury was very serious and that he needed urgent help as soon as possible. But he still hasn't returned to his human form, which makes it quite difficult to access him, which made the Duke nervous. But when the lady returns and cleanses him of the monster's energy, the doctors on duty will have to provide immediate assistance. The only way out now is to wait for Selena, but they sent an urgent message, so she will be back soon. At the same time, the Duchess was stunned when she heard that a monster had appeared near the estate. Lily said that some time ago, a monster tried to harm some nobles near the mountain range. Selena realized that it was not far from the outbuilding, but Gabriella, with a serious expression on her face, asked her not to worry. The bodyguard explained that as long as the Shivers Knights existed, there was no way for the monsters to cross the northern wall. Lily added that she also heard that some noblemen's knights had killed that very monster with a crossbow. Suddenly, Gabriella's face changed when she heard the crossbow mentioned, and Selena asked what was wrong. The girl explained that crossbows were not usually used due to the hunting grounds near the duchy. The whole point is that they are not inhabited by ferocious animals that require their obligatory use. The only ones who could have such a bulky weapon with them were the crossbowmen from the Marquis's unit. The Duchess immediately asked if she meant one of the elders of the family, to which she received an affirmative answer. Then the girl realized that they had already arrived. But because of the monster and the crossbows, she had a bad feeling. Her face saddened as she wondered if the children were okay, worrying first and foremost about their safety. At that very moment, she was surprised to notice a carrier pigeon flying around them, wanting to deliver a letter. Gabriella noticed that there was his lordship's seal on the edge, so Selena immediately began to read the letter. Her face immediately changed. She looked at Lily and Gabriella in surprise. She directly said that Aerie was injured. Some time later, as they approached the estate, Gabriella reminded them that they should walk faster. Before this, on the way back, they met Håkon, who kindly agreed to lend them his horse. The guy decided to apologize for the fact that they had to walk because of the poison that permeated most of the air. The Duchess replied with surprise that everything was fine. It was not that far. and in fact she did not feel the effects of the poison. Selena thought that it was most likely due to the divine power that prevented the poison from entering her body. At that very moment, she noticed how the knights were looking at her with delight and awe, unable to contain their emotions. When asked if the poison had spread to the main building, they replied that everything was fine because a barrier had been created. Gabriella suggested that they continue walking, since they would soon arrive at the main building, and everyone immediately agreed. She thought that Aerie must have been scared when he was hit by the arrow. She should check on him as soon as possible. At that very moment, her eyes widened in surprise when she noticed two dragons behind the barrier, including Irene. This time, Aerie's rage affected Irene. Maybe it's because of the injury, but it seems like he's suffering more this time. When the soldiers met her, they said that Lord Aerie was very ill, so they sent him out into the street in this state for now. They decided to leave them to her, and Selena was shocked to think that they thought she could somehow help the children. Why did she firmly decide that she had to do it? Because she had no choice, and then asked everyone to move away. The knights stood back, watching as the Duchess moved forward, whispering to Havina to come to her. At that very moment, the image of the goddess appeared before her, and the girl declared that she would say this only once, and that she needed to listen carefully. She will make a pact with her. They say that gods who make a pact put their own existence at risk. In other words, this agreement cannot be broken by the goddess, otherwise she will face severe punishment. Selena smiled and said that she would allow her to borrow her body, as she wanted, but not until the moment of her death. But just before someone more suitable for the role came along, Havina asked who might be more suitable. The Duchess said it could be someone without magical powers, someone who loved Seyfried more than she did. When someone like that appears, she will pass this role on to him, and the goddess will give her her divine power and freedom. Of course, if someone like that does not appear, she will continue to play this role, but the final choice remains with the goddess. At that very moment, Selena politely asked Sir Winter to open the barrier, but he flinched and hesitated. To reassure him, she turned around and said with a smile that everything was fine, but he had to hurry. When the barrier was opened, the Duchess walked softly through it, addressing the twins with a calm expression. She said that she would put them out of their suffering right now, and then extended her hands towards them, radiating divine warmth. Meanwhile, there was a meeting in the Duke's office, during which Raymond banged on the table, suggesting that they get down to business. He stated that he had heard rumors that monsters that should have been dead long ago were still alive, and he does not know what atrocity has been committed, but they walk in the guise of people, hiding their true nature. He then asked if they wanted to say that the seeds of disaster destroyed by the Duke 7 years ago had come back to life. Adler replied that he understood the Marquise's disappointment, but 7 years ago, the elders chose the Duke as the head immediately after he came of age. It was because the Duke had promised to personally destroy the seeds of disaster that Pontaine suddenly interrupted him. She stated that she had questions. The Duke looked at her, and after a few seconds of thought, asked her to continue. The woman decided to ask if the Duchess knew about the curse and the fact that the duchy was keeping it a secret. For a woman who had just married and entered into a family, this story would have been too cruel for her soul. This is a story about how someone's own child is born a monster and is even killed by his own father. Looking at Madame Pontaine with distrust, Killian firmly stated that he would not allow this to happen, no matter what the cost. The woman asked him if he thought the problem would resolve itself until they both had children. Adler said they couldn't risk making an enemy of the Grand Duke of Kiev and his family. At that very moment, Pontaine asked the Duke if he was sure that he could keep this secret forever, hiding it from everyone. An irritated Killian thought that Selena already knew about the curse, but revealing it now would do no good. At that very moment, he tried to relax, take a deep breath, and replied that she didn't need to know such things. Pontaine screamed that the Duchess was already mistress of the house, and if she found out about it later, her anger would be directed at the family. Raymond smiled and said that there was no need to complicate things, and that he would simply get rid of these nasty monsters. Then there will be no problem with the Grand Duke of Kiev, and the Duke's position will not be in jeopardy either. After some thought, Adler replied that it was a good idea, since after all, they were the only ones who knew of their existence. Raymond encouraged him, explaining that he would be taking his trusty team of crossbowmen with him to do so. Killian was filled with angry emotions when the butler burst into the office, bringing the Duke good news. Hans announced that the Duchess had returned, causing Killian's anger to immediately evaporate, leaving only hope. Coming out of the office, the Duke found his wife outside, who said that she was very glad to see him. Looking at the children, Selina said that they had fallen asleep, so she ordered them to be put to bed in her room and asked the doctor to come there. Grabbing her hand, Killian asked how she did it, to which the girl replied that she would explain it later. Seeing them, Pontin asked if Claudia's children had just been taken upstairs, and Raymond declared that they were not children. He also noted that the rumors that the Duchess was the most beautiful woman in the empire were not exaggerated. Stepping forward, the Marquis bowed to the girl, saying that he was pleased to meet her, and then introduced himself. Selina immediately realized that this was the same person who had injured Airy, causing her to frown. Ignoring him, the Duchess went to Pontin, saying that she was right about them being Claudia's children. They must have been thrilled to be playing outside for the first time in a long time, and were overtired. Selina asked to forgive them, but the woman replied that it was not a problem, asking how often she spent time with them. The Duchess answered in the affirmative, saying that she also enjoyed their company, as she had been quite lonely before. Pontin replied that she was pleased to hear it, and she was sure that the children of the previous duke must be simply charming.